Hello everyone and welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name's Tim Graham, and in the next 60 minutes, we'll reveal how you can build a thriving property portfolio, even if you're starting with limited resources or little to no experience. We'll show you the tools and the data-driven methods to identify high-growth locations, and we'll also show you how to avoid common mistakes and act with confidence in the property market. We'll also show you how you can also become one of the top 1% of property investors in Australia. Stay with us until the end and you'll learn about our exclusive offers that you won't want to miss.
Hi everybody and welcome to the Investors Playbook webinar. I'm Terry Ryder, founder of Hotspotting. I've spent over 40 years analysing Australian property markets, identifying trends and helping investors to make informed decisions. It's been my life's work to help people unlock the potential of real estate.
So Terry, we've taken 2 years to finalise this course, and in our eyes, it'll probably never be finished because we will continually want to add and refine it as the market changes. But for those learning about hotspotting or learning about you and I for the first time today, could you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to found hotspotting in the first place?
Tim, the story of hotspotting goes back 2 decades. I suggested to Money Magazine that I write a series of articles identifying markets that had outperformed market norms and why they were outperformers. And in the process of writing a series of articles, each one on a different location with a different characteristic, the thought occurred to me that this was something that property investors desperately wanted to know. The question I was being asked as I was talking to people about these articles was, where's the best place to buy? That's the question I've always been asked by property investors all over the country. So it occurred to me that there was actually a business in this, that I was in the process of conducting research and writing features identifying why certain locations outperform market norms. So that's been the birthplace of hotspotting. That's what's evolved into a business where we now have a series of market reports telling people the best places to buy in certain categories, and it's evolved into providing a whole range of other related services as well. But everyone has a property story. What's yours?
Yeah, I suppose my property story, I grew up in country Victoria and a town of about 1,100 people. First piece of real estate I bought was a block of land there, and obviously the town I grew up in. And I was planning to build a house on that, and then after about 6 years, I hadn't done that yet through separation of a partner and things like that. But when it came time to sell that property, it was worth about as much as I paid for it 6 years later. And I thought there's got to be a better way to do real estate. So I eventually moved to Melbourne after about 12 years in hospitality. I started working for an investment firm in St Kilda Road in Melbourne and started to learn the ins and outs of finance and real estate. And that was when I really started to understand that you could be buying outside of your backyard. You know, not everybody has to buy in the suburb they live in. Even cross-border, buying interstate was an option. So it really opened my eyes up, and that's where I started to grow my portfolio from there.
But also an important learning there in your story, isn't it? That you started out by yourself without any knowledge, without any mentors, without any research advice. Mm-hmm. But later when you joined a property company, started to learn from experts that you started to succeed. That's an important learning for people.
Oh, absolutely. I think I was a Dolomite kid as well. So, the only bank that I'd ever go to was the Commonwealth Bank. And of course, that's what I did when I bought my first property. And of course, they're going to give me the best options that bank can give me. And once I started to learn about mortgage brokers and all of the different, policies with different lenders, I realized that you could actually start to accumulate wealth much faster. So that's my property story. After I started working in the real estate industry, I worked for an investment firm in St Kilda Road. I did that for about 8 years, and then I was lucky enough to get sort of headhunted by a property tech company. There was like a wholesale version of realestate.com, if you will. I was lucky enough to sort of help them grow their offices internationally. So I was lucky enough to work in about 16 different countries overseas in real estate. And it was always with investors as well. So I was never really hoping homeowners buying their next home. It was always about the investments. So I was it was interesting because I learned a lot about other cultures, and I learned a lot about different investment strategies, whether it was a yield focus, a growth focus, and obviously bringing all of that together back here in Australia once I returned and joining the team at Hotspotting. It's been a bit of a whirlwind because I started my experience in real estate using your reports, and for not only for my own clients but for my own personal purchases. So it's quite interesting to be sitting here today talking about how others can use those same reports and being within the hotspotting business.
It's interesting working in those other cultures, but what did that teach you about Australian real estate?
Well, firstly, just how lucky we are. We've got a really good tax system that allows us to own investment properties much more affordably than you can overseas. we also have the luxury of, much as we see in the news that it's, very unaffordable here. I mean, when I spoke to people in New York or in London that were a similar age to me, we talked about investment. Real estate didn't come up. It's just completely unimaginable to be buying real estate in those markets. So
I don't think people in Australia appreciate just how much Australia is an outlier, that the level of home ownership is much higher than global norms in Australia, but also the level of investment property ownership is much higher than would occur in other countries.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's some of the topics we're going to talk today about, the different myths in real estate. So we're going to start dispelling some of those. And the first being that property investment is only for the wealthy or the highly experienced. True or false?
Absolutely false. You don't have to be wealthy to invest in real estate, but it can make you wealthy, or can make you wealthier than you start out if you go about it the right way. Look, no matter whatever field of endeavour you're embarking on, you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And every day we're talking to people who are starting out with property investment in the course of running the hotspotting business. And many of them are quite young. They're in their 20s and 30s, a lot of them, mostly on average incomes. That is definitely not wealthy people. Occasionally we do talk to people who have got the ability to buy $1 million property, but most people who start out looking to buy, $300,000, $400,000 property. In Australia, that's still possible. And so it's actually probably the norm that most people starting out are, just people on average incomes. And I always remember the example of one of our longer-term customers who started out in his 20s. He was a tradie working for government on a very average income, but he started in a humble way, bought a property in a good location, affordable. It grew in value. He bought another, and in his mid-30s, he now has 8 properties. He's still earning average money, but he's developed a portfolio that ultimately will be something they can probably retire early on.
So, Terry, obviously media headlines are always publishing how difficult it is to get into the market, and I do agree that for a young person trying to enter the market for the first time, it can be difficult. But a lot of the rhetoric that we see is that it's the median price of Sydney is 1.1. How can anyone afford to do it? But the truth be known, we don't have to live in Sydney. We don't have to live in those $1 million suburbs.
And we don't have to buy at the median price. Very few people do.
Yeah.
So media massively misleads people about affordability. Every day we see the stories that everywhere is unaffordable and no one can afford to buy. If that was true, markets would grind to a halt and prices would not be rising. Obviously, it's not true because we have a very high level of transaction in Australia. But they always talk about the median house price in the most expensive cities when they're running
an 80% loan on that as well. So you need a 20% deposit of $1 million property.
Exactly, but you don't need a 20% deposit. Look, we recently analysed our best picks for 12 months ago to see how they'd performed, how much they'd grown. And many of them had grown by 20% in a year in which the average was growth of 4 or 5%. What struck me about many of our examples, some of them were locations where you're typically spending maybe $700,000 or $800,000 to buy a typical property, but many of them also were places we only had to spend $300,000 or $400,000 to buy a typical property, and they grew 20-25% in value. What I sometimes say, ugly real estate grows in value just as well, sometimes much better than prestige real estate. The bulk of the demand actually goes to the humble suburbs and the affordable areas because that's where most people are. That's what most people can afford. So you don't need to be spending big money to get into the market and get good capital growth. Quite often the best results are actually at the lower end of the market. And that's great news for people starting out. You don't have to be wealthy. You don't have to spend a lot to make big gains.
Thinking about the myth, do you have to be rich to get into it? One of our students, as recent as today, has put down a deposit on a property down in Tasmania, $450,000 property, looking at the water, 10% deposit, $45,000, and about $12,000 in stamp duty. So that student has basically entered the market as an investor using about $50,000, $60,000 total to get into the market. But most people think you need a couple of $100,000.
Well, that's right, you don't. And for some people, they think, well, how do I get together even $40,000? Well, I often tell the story of one of my kids who was a full-time student, working part-time to make a bit of money, knew she was going overseas. She saved $20,000 in a year working part-time while being a full-time student. Now, if she can do that, Other people can do that, and there's other ways. Of course, most of the people that we come across in our business at Hotspotting who are starting out, they tend to be couples, so they're both working. They can pull their resources and get started. Family can help, but often for people who don't have access to that, it's just a case of saving hard. And I think one of the big benefits that COVID period gave to people, forcing people to not spend so much money because you couldn't go out.
It's got online shopping habits instead.
Well, yeah, maybe, but it did teach people that, hey, we can actually spend less and save a lot more if we have the sort of discipline that was forced upon us during those COVID lockdown periods.
Okay, time for myth number 2. Tell me, Terry, how many times have you spoken to a customer who said, I've done this before and it didn't work? Maybe I'm not cut out for property investment.
Yeah, I have spoken to people over the years who have had bad outcomes, and some people have had terrible outcomes. But I think the thing that most of them have in common is that they actually recover and they move on and ultimately are successful. What you have to do in those circumstances is overcome the fear that's been generated by that early failure.
Have you had circumstances like that yourself?
What I know to be true, having the advanced years that I have, is that as John Lennon famously wrote in a song, life is what happens while you're busy making other plans. You can start young and have a strategy, but to put it colloquially, shit happens along the course of a life, and sometimes through circumstances, your financial circumstances go backwards and you have to restart and rebuild. That's happened to me a couple of times in my life. But the point is that having learned what I have, you learn lessons from all of that, and you learn to do it better. And I have successfully recovered from having to restart. So that's how I would answer that question. That it's not so much about fear; it's about just dealing with the blows that life inevitably rains upon anybody in the course of a life. And if you're fortunate enough to live a long life,
I think fear is an interesting part of this discussion. So fear often paralyzes people. They're too scared of what happens if I make a mistake. But the only way that you can really overcome fear is with education. And, once you get education around those things that are scaring you, you often get confidence. And with confidence can come action.
Yeah. The word actually I hear most often is not so much fear, it's overwhelm. People look at the size of Australia and they're overwhelmed by the number of choices they have. I think there's like 15,000 suburbs and towns in Australia. And how do you choose from that vast number of locations the one that's right for you? And people don't really know how to go about that. That's why we need this property course, because people don't know how to attack that simple factor. That in the course we teach people techniques to narrow down. You start out with 15,000 possibilities and you narrow it down very quickly by asking a series of questions to a manageable shortlist. So, but people do suffer from that overwhelm. The number of choices that they have to make, the enormity perhaps of the amount of money they're borrowing, and then the fear of taking on debt, that's something to overcome, and you do learn to do that over time. But the best way to overcome all those problems and fears and the sense of overwhelm is to have a team. And we often say to people, you need to build your team before you build your portfolio. And it's just so true. People sometimes get excited about the idea of property and they rush out and start looking for things to buy. But before you do that, you've got to restrain yourself. You've got to have a team of people around you who are experts in their field, some of which don't cost any money, some which cost a little bit of money, but not a lot. But it's so important to be willing to invest in information and advice so that first choice that you make, the first property you buy, is a good one. Because if you make a good choice with the first one, it feeds on to your ability to buy the second and the third and beyond.
So if you're talking to somebody today who had bought an apartment off the plan many years ago and it was worth less today than it was the day they bought it, so they've gone backwards, they've had a bad experience, it's a pretty big hit. How do you overcome that? And how do I realise that maybe property is for me? I just didn't get it right the first time because of a lack of education.
Yeah, I think understanding why you got that first one wrong, and sometimes you had bad advice. You've got to not only take advice, but you need to take advice from the right people. Understanding what went wrong and be willing to learn from it. I don't know anyone. I know a lot of people who've been successful with property investment over time, but I don't know anyone who's been successful without first making mistakes. from one perspective, the mistakes are actually the most valuable thing that you've done, because you really do
learn from it.
You really do learn from them, and you gain a determination not to do that again. And so, okay, I'm going to go and talk to people who know more about this than I do, and that's a good learning. People sometimes balk at the expense of taking on advice, and I just think it's the worst kind of false economy. You can't penny pinch your way to success in real estate. You've got to be willing to spend a little bit of money, not a lot. And if people are sort of a little bit concerned, well, I've got to spend money on an accountant, I've got to spend money on a mentor, on research, you're not spending very much money. And the money that you will make can be hundreds of thousands of dollars if you do it right, by being willing to spend a few hundred or a few $1,000s on good advice. And sometimes what I say to people, the way I look at it is, if I pay $500,000 for a piece of real estate and it grows at, say, an annual rate of 10%, which recently in good locations is quite moderate, within a matter of a few months, the capital growth I've got has paid for all those expenses. It's paid for my buyer's agent, it's paid for my accountancy advice, it's paid for the research reports and the mentor, and everything's paid for in a few months of capital growth. And after that, it's all profit.
And just say false economy, what happens if you were to spend that, you tried to do it on your own, you do get it wrong, that expense that you were trying to save could cost you a hell of a lot more.
Well, your own story, how you started out with real estate, that first choice you made is a classic example. You wouldn't have made that choice had you had access to good advice from people with experience.
Well, I'd say that's myth number 2 busted. Myth number 3. Terry, tell me, what would you say to people who think that they either don't have enough money to invest or they don't have enough time to invest?
Well, firstly, about money, you'd be surprised at how little money it would take to get started. You don't need to buy $1 million property to get good results, as we've already discussed. Not even $500,000 property. You don't need a 20% deposit. There are ways to get started where you don't need to get together a lot of money. In terms of I don't have enough time, well, it doesn't really take that much time, particularly if you're smart enough to invest a little bit in good advice and mentors, people to help you along the way. The search for property can take some time, but if you engage a buyer's agent to do the legwork for you, having given them clear instructions about what you're looking for, can save you an enormous amount. Whenever I buy, I always use a buyer's agent, not because I don't lack for knowledge. It's because it saves me an enormous amount of time, and I like having another set of eyes on what I'm doing, another opinion, because I'm not foolish enough to think that I know everything about real estate. So there are ways you can do it without taking a lot of time, but it really is a discipline, I think. You need to put in some time, but if you've got a disciplined approach and you decide, look, I'm going to put in X number of hours a week on this and set aside that time and do it, you'll be amazed at just how much you can achieve, particularly if you've got access to good sources of information and you've got access to good advice. And that's the key thing, I think. So, but the other answer to that question is that's what our property course, the Investors Playbook, is set up to do, to help people save time and money ultimately by giving them the tools to be able to do this without having to take a lot of time and get too much of other people's advice once they get started.
It's a good point, because we've had students that have come through this course not because they want to come out with it so that they can go and find property, negotiate on their own, although the course will teach you that, but they actually don't want to do all of that. They still want to engage a buyer's agent because of that time saving and maybe access to off markets and all those types of things. But they also want to know that what they're putting forward as an option for me to consider, I'm well versed in whether it's a good or bad property because of the information I've learnt within the course.
The people that I know are truly successful with property investing, the people who've got portfolios on 10 properties, 20 properties, the some I know have got more than 30 properties. What they have in common is they all treat real estate investment like a business. In business, you've got to spend money to make money, but they actually create a team, and they've got a team, they've got an accountant, a mortgage broker that they trust, who gives them good advice. Doesn't cost anything to use a mortgage broker, incidentally. And other professionals, experts on depreciation, for example, and they've got these professionals that they tap into, make their jobs easier, save them time, make sure they're making good decisions, and ultimately not only saves them money, but helps them make a lot more money by doing it right.
You talked a lot about building the team before you build the portfolio. I'm interested to know, obviously money could be one thing. How much is this service going to cost me? Two is, what's the background on the people that are giving you this advice? What's their story? But what else do you look for when you're selecting that team?
Look, I look for referrals from people I know who have had experience. I think that's the best way to get good people, because I've had conversation with people who've ended up with getting with the wrong people, and they've had the wrong kind of advice from the wrong people. So I always talk to people I know and ask around. Just ask around your family circles, or your circle of friends, or your business colleagues. Quite often, who you'll come across someone who's had experience with real estate investment, or who's got a good accountant that they've had for 10 years and absolutely love them, and they're willing to recommend them. We're getting asked those questions all the time. That's why we started the panel of partners with the hotspotting business, because people are always saying, okay, you've told us where to buy, but I need a good buyer's agent. Can you recommend someone? So I think that's really important. Just take somebody out of the phone book or online. Get a referral from someone that you trust who's had a good experience.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I'm going to quickly touch on, we talked a little bit about the time savings there, but in terms of if I don't feel like I've got the money to invest, I also want people to understand that our property course isn't about you needing to buy today. Part of what we talk about is your goal planning, and something that we've been talking a lot about is if you were to have a goal to buy real estate, it means nothing just to have that as an idea. You need to be able to set smart goals, measurable goals, and actually start to put a plan in place so that you can actually get to that much sooner. And what you'll learn through doing the course is not just about the planning part, but also how do I finance it? And it doesn't necessarily always have to be from your cash deposits. It could be out of equity. It could be out of family guarantor schemes. Lots of different ways for people to get into the market, even with low resources.
Yeah, a lot of people come to property investment after first getting into home ownership. And after you've owned a home for a few years, all things being equal, you will have equity in your home. And that can be a way to get into property investment. You don't actually have to have a cash deposit if you've got substantial equity after owning a home for maybe 5 or 10 years.
Yeah. Well, Terry, I think we've busted that myth as well. Maybe it's time to start talking about exactly what the course entails.
Absolutely. Throughout the Investors Playbook, we'll cover everything you need to know to succeed in property investment. We'll start by helping you build a solid foundation with goal planning and mindset mastery, where you will set clear financial goals and develop the mindset of a successful investor. Next, we'll dive into market analysis to teach you how to analyse the Australian property market using proven, data-driven methods, ensuring you can identify the best opportunities. Then in property selection, you'll master the art of choosing the right property type that aligns with your strategy and goals. We'll also focus on risk management, showing you how to safeguard your investments from market fluctuations and unexpected challenges. As you progress, you'll explore advanced strategies where we cover financing techniques, portfolio growth, and exit strategies to take your investments to the next level. And finally, you'll have access to a suite of practical tools, including interactive workbooks, calculators, and exclusive resources, all designed to streamline your investment journey and help you make informed decisions. By the end of this course, you'll have the knowledge, the confidence, and the tools to build a thriving property portfolio.
And when you join the Investors Playbook, you're not just signing up for a course. You're gaining access to a complete toolkit for property investment success. Here's what you can expect. First, you'll receive expert guidance. You'll be learning directly from Terry Ryder, one of Australia's most trusted property analysts, and myself, a seasoned strategist with years of practical experience in property investment. And together, we're committed to sharing the strategies that have helped countless investors achieve their goals. You'll also benefit from real-world case studies. These examples are more than just stories. They're actionable lessons that give you a clear roadmap to apply the course content to real-life scenarios. Our interactive workbooks will guide you through every step of the way, helping you apply your knowledge and craft a personalised investment plan that's tailored to your goals. This course is built on proven expertise. With over 60 years of combined experience in the real estate industry, we know what works, and we're here to share that with you. What sets the Investors Playbook apart is its practical focus. This isn't just theory, it's a course packed with actionable steps that you can implement immediately to achieve your real estate results. And finally, we provide comprehensive resources, from in-depth data analysis to market insights. You'll have access to everything you need to confidently navigate the property market and make informed decisions. We're excited to guide you through on this journey, and we can't wait to see you achieve your property investment goals with the Investors Playbook.
Now, I want you to take a moment and imagine your future success. Picture having a clear step-by-step plan that's designed to help you build wealth and create financial security, something that gives you confidence and peace of mind as you navigate the property market. Imagine being able to identify the next property hotspot before anyone else does. Think of the competitive edge that would give you and how you could transform your investment journey. But let's be honest, without the right tools, strategies, and guidance, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. You might find yourself stuck, unsure of where to start or how to move forward. That's where the Investors Playbook comes in. This course has been meticulously designed to bridge that gap, giving you everything you need to invest with clarity, confidence, and ultimately with success. If you've made it this far into the webinar, there's a high likelihood that you're interested in property investment and in growing your wealth. So it makes sense to take this to the next level, right? Well, we would like to think so, but we're also mindful that you may have questions or hesitations. So let's address what they could be. What if I'm a beginner?
Well, I think that's a perfect place to start with a property course. If I'm a beginner, I want to make sure that I'm doing it chronologically and not leaving any stones unturned. It's quite often I find people that may already have 2 or 3 properties in their portfolio, but they were sort of accumulated without design. And I think if you were to ask those people, if they could access a course like this and do it all over again, they probably would.
This is why we designed it in the first place, because so many of the people we talk to day to day are people starting out and they're nervous, they're uncertain, in some cases overwhelmed. They have a desire to achieve something. Usually it's a desire to maybe provide for their retirement or maybe for their families to help with their kids' education. They have the motivations, they just don't know how to get started and they're a little bit apprehensive.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say as well, we've designed this course with the beginner in mind, like everything from your goal planning. We've got call scripts. We've got a glossary for all the words and terms that you're going to hear when you start to chat with your mortgage broker. What does LVR mean? Loan to value ratio, all the different things that you're going to hear along the way. We've got it all in there for a beginner.
Yeah, but all those things also apply to people who have actually had some experience with property investment because they haven't necessarily started out with a strategy in mind. It's amazing how many people do own real estate, but they haven't done it according to a strategy. They've just bought a few things.
Yeah.
And when we start to talk to them and introduce some of the concepts in the course, that they start to understand that they really do need to have a clear path and they're working to a plan, because if they don't have one, they're sort of being distracted by bright, shiny objects that pop up in the property industry and maybe buying something that's not really appropriate for where they want to get to in the end, or something that's maybe not a good piece of real estate. It just appears attractive. So, working with the tools in this course, people can do things in a clearly planned and methodical way and make good choices and avoid making mistakes.
Yeah. I think the general theme that I've heard from students that are beginners are, they keep on using the word game changer because they knew what mistakes they would have made had they not done this course. Things like, I didn't know I should get a building and pest report. All those types of things that we step you through in the due diligence checklist to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success.
I was doing a session quite recently with a couple who have actually had some experience with property investment. They do own 2 or 3 properties already as well as their home, but they never actually considered the importance of the entity in which they buy. They never thought about, should we buy in my name or my partner's name, or should we buy in joint names, or should we have a trust? They hadn't considered any of those things and all the implications. They hadn't spoken to an accountant. Such an important step to get that right in the beginning. It can save you tens of thousands of dollars.
If you want to move it later, it's a very expensive exercise with stamp duty and things like that.
Absolutely. So it's important to understand you need to do those things, because a lot of people don't even know. And these were people with some experience with property investment. They hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah.
So Tim, what if I complete the course but I'm still not feeling confident?
That's a great question. Well, we'll give you our personal guarantee that if you're not 100% confident that you know how to go out and find the right properties, place the right offers, Terry and I will make ourselves available to assist you until you're ready. Now, Terry, what if I can't afford it?
In a moment, we're going to show you what this course is actually worth and then present you with some incredible offers that won't be repeated. You'll not see them anywhere else but within this webinar.
Now, let's break down everything you're getting with the Investors Playbook so you can see the incredible value this course offers. First, you're getting a comprehensive 9-module property course. This course covers everything from mindset mastery to market analysis to advanced strategies and exit planning. It's the most detailed step-by-step guide to property investment in the Australian market. This is valued at $3,650 on its own.
Next, we're including a full suite of interactive tools and resources. These are practical tools designed to streamline your investment journey, including calculators and valuation tools from Hotspotting, and this is valued at $1,990.
You'll also gain access to member-exclusive content and support. This includes ongoing Q&A sessions, exclusive webinars, and updates tailored to help you stay ahead of the market. That's a further $950 of value.
And when you complete the course, you'll receive a certificate of completion that validates the skills and expertise you've developed. That's valued at $200.
And finally, you'll have a personal strategy session with Terry and I when you complete this course. This is your chance to sit down with us, discuss your goals, and ask any burning questions you may still have about your investment strategy. This session usually would cost you another $880.
So when you add it all up, the total value of everything included is $7,670. But we're not asking you to pay anywhere near that amount because we're not finished yet. To ensure you're getting the most out of this course, we're also going to throw in some extra value.
Let me share something that's going to make this offer truly unbeatable. For a limited time only, we're including a 12-month Hotspotting Premium membership valued at $2,500, absolutely free when you enroll in the Investors Playbook. This membership gives you everything you need to take your property investment journey to the next level.
First, you'll have access to the Hotspotting Members Portal. This includes unlimited property valuations powered by the most advanced AVM technology in Australia. With this tool, you'll be able to confidently assess the potential of any property that you're considering. You'll also gain access to the Research Hub, where you can dive deep into real-time data for any suburb in Australia. That means you'll have the insights you need to make informed, data-driven decisions.
On top of that, you'll receive all of Hotspotting's national and state-based reports. These reports are designed to give you a comprehensive view of the best investment opportunities across the country.
And that's not all. You'll also get access to over 120 location reports. These detailed resources are packed with valuable insights to help you pinpoint high-performing locations and uncover growth opportunities others might miss.
So Terry, for our students that are ready to take action, they're going to receive the Investors Playbook course valued at just over $7,000 plus a 12-month Hotspotting Premium membership valued at $2,500, taking the total just over $10,000. But we aren't charging half of that. The Investors Playbook retails for just $4,950. But for the first 50 students that sign up, you can use the QR code on screen and we'll take a further $1,000 off the price, meaning you're only paying $3,950.
So thank you everyone for attending today, and for those who take action now, we look forward to seeing you in the course.
Thank you everyone.